listening to U.S. President Donald Trump speaking from the White House briefing room on the first anniversary of his second inauguration, taking questions from reporters. Spoke for more than an hour and a half on this occasion. And listening in with us was our chief U.S. correspondent, Alan Fisher. Alan joins us now live from Washington, D.C. Alan, it's been a busy year. Of course, what the president has been talking about has been what he thinks were his signature achievements over the past 12 months, and there was a lot to go through. What was the biggest standout here for you in all of this?
Well, he's not saying anything new that we haven't heard before, and there's, of course, a lot of things there that need to be fact-checked. The fact that he's brought in $18 billion to the United States in inward investment, that's not true. The fact that foreign countries are paying tariffs, that again is not true. That he's dropped drug prices by about 600%. That, again, is not true. He says, of course, that he brought peace in 8 wars. Some of those wars haven't been settled and still deserve a lot of work. He did manage to get a ceasefire in Gaza. That was a key for him. He has brought more money into the country through inward investment, not as much as he said he was going to do. He has renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America as far as the White House is concerned, even though he said he was going to rename it the Gulf of Trump and then thought more about it. And again, he went on about how he felt he should have the peace prize. He also launched strikes against Iran and their nuclear capability. A number of presidents have considered that over the years. He's actually done it. So there are things there that have been a success for Donald Trump, maybe not as much as he thinks there is. But what we got was largely a reading of the executive orders that he signed. And of course, it's important to remember that executive orders are significant, but they don't change the law in the United States. He is now going to go to Davos. He'll be flying in a few hours. He says he's going to tell everyone there what a great success the United States has been. There have been improvements. Gas prices are down. But for ordinary Americans, the thing that he keeps talking about is affordability. He says it's a Democratic hoax. But most people, when they go to the supermarket at the weekend, they find that their bills are much more expensive. Healthcare is more expensive, buying cars is more expensive, and that is reflected in Donald Trump's low ratings in the polls.
Yes, and the president saying as he heads to Davos, I'm sure I'll be happily awaited for amid tensions with those NATO allies. Alan Fisher, our chief U.S. correspondent, thank you very much from Washington. Eric Ham is a U.S. political analyst. He joins us now also from Washington, D.C. Eric, thank you very much for being with us. You know, the president said that potentially his team has done a bad job promoting all of the good things that he's been able to do at home over the past year. Do you agree with that assessment?
Actually, no. We have heard the president oftentimes serve as his own cheerleader and comms person, trying to get credit for many actions that, as your chief correspondent has already mentioned, simply are not true. And now the president is going to Davos, where he will likely receive an equally icy reception from many of those world leaders, particularly those European allies who are now looking at the United States more warily, given the fact that the president continues to double down on this idea of an American takeover of Greenland.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that the president took the most questions on. And when asked how far he'll go to acquire it, he said, you'll find out. One of the other things is that foreign policy took up a large chunk of this for this America First president, Eric, including him saying that shortly he'll be starting to target drugs coming into the U.S. by land. Is that something that you think is going to be a significant part of his platform and his agenda going into the second year of this administration?
Well, it's quite perplexing because we're now basically running a fragile state, Venezuela, for the reason stated by this administration is because it was drugs that were coming into the country. Those extrajudicial killings, more than 100 people killed as a result of military strikes, we're told is because of drugs that were flooding the United States. And now the president is pivoting to something else. And I suppose that we will continue to see these types of pivots from this administration, not just on Venezuela or on Greenland, but also and quite possibly even countries like Canada as well.
Eric, it was pretty staggering. The first about 15 minutes of this press conference, the president took up holding up pictures of people that he said that border agents were looking for or had arrested in Minneapolis, and trying to convince people that it was a significant operation that was underway there to get criminals, people who had been convicted of crimes in the U.S., and remove them from the United States. How big of an issue is what's happening in Minnesota right now for the president and his administration?
I think if we look at what's going on in Minnesota, and the way the president is responding to it, it's a microcosm of how this administration, and particularly this president, views not only the country, but also the world. He sees enemies at every turn. And more importantly, if somehow you are seen as foreign or other, then the president seeks to engage with you using very extreme purposes and actions. And I think that's what we're seeing. And now it's becoming, I think, a powder keg for this administration to try to contain. As we know, there are National Guard troops on standby, and the president is looking at the possibility of invoking the Insurrection Act in that state, even as we know that he has targeted political leaders there with subpoenas and also criminal investigations.
Eric, as you listened to this speech, as the president touted what he believes are his successes from the first year of this administration, what stood out for you?
I think the fact that the president continued to double down, particularly on this idea of the economy doing so well. And he got a question from one of the reporters asking if he was actually falling into the same trap as Joe Biden. I thought that was a very profound question because I do believe that the president is struggling with not only how to fix many of the problems that millions of Americans are facing, but also continuing to somehow tout an economy that is doing better than most Americans think it's doing, also suggests that the president is woefully out of touch. And that, of course, is leading to what we're seeing as historically low approval ratings.
Eric Ham, we appreciate you joining us live here on Al Jazeera.
Thank you.